Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine, aka Jazzy Jet Sets, and welcome back to my channel. You know I'm bringing you all things expat life, traveling through the continent, and everything in between. Today, I'm excited. I'm giving you the scoop on the Princeton Africa Fellowship Program. So if you are a recent graduate or a young professional, and you're interested in living and working on the continent of Africa, tap in. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to learn more about what it's like living on the African continent as a Black American expat, for travel guides to a bunch of the cities that I've been to, and more. But for now, let's jump into Princeton in Africa. Please note that in the description of this video, I'll make sure I include the Princeton Africa website, plus the link for a one-pager that gives you all you need to know about the application process for the fellowship program. So what is Princeton in Africa? I'm sure your first thought is, Princeton, do I need to be a graduate or a student at Princeton University to be a part of this program? And the short answer is no. So Princeton Africa was actually founded by a group of Princeton University graduates back in 1999. They were focused on service on the continent, and that's where the name comes from today. In order to be a participant or a fellow in the Princeton Africa program, you actually just have to have graduated from an accredited university in the US. Princeton Africa is affiliated with Princeton University, but it is not officially a part of Princeton University. So Princeton in Africa is this one-year fellowship program that matches recent graduates and young professionals to high-impact organizations and nonprofits on the continent. And the fields that fellows go into as they become a fellow range from public health, environmental conservation, education, business development, income generation, and the actual organizations that the fellows join range from smaller local organizations to larger internationally operated organizations. So for example, World Food Program or IRC. And of course, where the organizations are located are all across the continent, from West Africa to East Africa to Southern Africa. African countries with the larger number of fellows are typically Kenya and Uganda, but there are definitely fellows that are placed in Ghana, South Africa, Togo, Zambia, Botswana, Rwanda. So it is a huge range of African countries, a large range of fields and types of jobs and organizations that you can go into as a Princeton in Africa fellow. Your next question should be, is this a paid fellowship? And the answer is yes. So Princeton in Africa fellowships are definitely paid. Princeton actually provides you with medical insurance, security insurance, counseling services as needed. You also go through a pre-departure orientation as well as a mid-year retreat. And your host organization actually provides you with a modest stipend to cover your living expenses. Now, are you going to get rich as a Princeton Africa fellow? No. The entire fellowship is really about the experience, and I'm sure this is what everyone says when it comes to internships and fellowships. But it's really all about the experience and the professional opportunities that you get being a part of the fellowship program. So again, do not expect tons of money, but you will be paid for your work. So I actually did the Princeton in Africa program from 2015 to 2016. This was about 5 years out of undergrad, and I had been doing corporate banking for that entire time. And I was in Kampala, Uganda for 1 year working with an organization called Electra Limited. They focused on infrastructure development for emerging markets. I served as the finance associate, which meant that I focused on finance, but I also had a ton of other responsibilities. So thinking about cost analysis, communications, and writing. I had to go into the field a few times, had to think about and learn about how solar power works on the continent and specifically in Uganda. And the great thing about that is I was able to learn about all those things before even going to business school or going to my MBA program. And having Princeton in Africa on my resume and working with this international developer, it really gave me a leg up on my business school application as well. So another great benefit of doing the program. So why Princeton in Africa? I'm gonna give you 3 reasons. Reason number 1 is really 2, which is support and community. You are able to receive the necessary support much better with a smaller organization than you would if you were at a larger fellowship program / organization. So that means whether you have professional development challenges that you need to talk to someone about, whether that means you are having some like mental challenges that you need to tap into or figure out, whether that means there are some personal things that you need to figure out. Princeton, Africa does a really good job of making sure that they are really connected to you and providing you with the support that you need. Another element that I appreciate is the preparation that they provide. So before you even go to the African continent, you go through a number of sessions in your pre-departure orientation that are centered around identity, centered around, you know, how you show up in these places, what an emergency evacuation looks like, and literally everything in between. The other part of reason number one is the community. So the Alumni Network. The alumni really take an engaged approach to Princeton, Africa. So we are reading through the applications, we are doing info sessions, we are volunteering as coordinators for the mid-year retreats so that we can help out with fellows. We are also providing fellows with support in the background. So if there are fellows who identify the same way as we do and they're in a specific country, they need advice about certain things. The Alumni Network / the community of Princeton, Africa is really quite strong. Okay, reason number two why you should choose Princeton, Africa over any other fellowship is experience. The professional experience as well as the personal experience. There is opportunity for a huge amount of professional growth because of the amount of responsibilities that you have. So the professional experience and opportunity is unmatched, but also the personal experience. So the day-to-day life, of course, of you living in a new country and immersing yourself into the culture, but also coming back with other fellows, Princeton Africa staff, Princeton Africa alumni, to kind of help you navigate, you know, identity, the ways that we show up on the continent, things that you need to be thinking about as you transition from your fellowship and the next steps, thinking about graduate school, applications, jobs, all those things. So the third reason and most important reason in my opinion as to why you should choose Princeton Africa over any other fellowship is intentionality and leadership. I think it's so important for Westerners, whether you're Black or white or in between. It's really important for us to be intentional about how we show up in the international development space, in the emerging market space, making sure that we are coming with humility and recognizing that we're not saving anyone or doing anyone any favors, and we are more so coming to, you know, benefit from a really amazing opportunity and experience, as well as provide support where needed, as we are guided by those who are actually running things locally and on the ground. Recently, Princeton Africa has become more diverse, so from the board of directors all the way down to the staff, down to the actual fellows. It's become a much more diverse organization, and even last year, Princeton Africa named a new executive director who is a Nigerian woman who has been taking a number of really dope steps, so making sure that as a Western organization, we are not coming into African countries and telling organizations what they need to do or what they need help with. We are more so taking a more supportive role and allowing the organizations and the citizens in these countries to guide us on how they can be supported by us, which I think is a great approach, and it really just sets Princeton Africa apart from other fellowship programs. Intentionality is also reflected in the actual fellows who join the organizations. And it's also reflected in some of the changes that have been made in the organization. Which brings me to a very piece of exciting news, which is the Princeton Africa Nexus pilot. The Nexus pilot will actually open up the Princeton Africa Fellowship application to African residents. So this year, 5 African residents will be chosen through the application process to be paired with a Princeton Africa Fellow as well as the host organization. So of course there will be an opportunity to exchange culturally, professionally, personally, everything in that nature. I think this is a great opportunity for anyone on the African continent who is looking to move into international development, who wants to do something a little bit different with regards to serving their country. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. So the application process and a couple of tips. The Princeton Africa application is quite a process, so let's just get to it. First of all, the application opens August 31st and it closes October 26th. You start off by completing the written application. So of course, a few short answer questions in addition to your resume, recommendation, etc. Pro tip number 1, brush up on your writing skills because PIAF receives thousands of applications every year, but they only choose between 20 to 25 and 50 fellows each year. So you wanna make sure that your application is really a standout one as well. Once you have completed the written application process, if chosen, you will be doing a first round interview, which is done with Princeton Africa staff and or Princeton Africa alumni. And pro tip here, make sure you reach out to some Princeton Africa alumni, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether you know somebody personally via email, whatever you need to do, but just reach out to some alumni to get their perspective, understand what their experience was like while they were doing Princeton Africa. Not only to just understand the program for yourself, but it also makes for a much better interview discussion as well. Once you make it through the first round of interviews, then you are put through the matching process. So as Princeton Africa is choosing these fellows to connect with organizations, they are also going through the same process with organizations on the continent. So once this list of organizations and the list of fellows are solidified, the organizations have an opportunity to go through fellows profiles and decide fellows that they might want to interview to actually be the fellow for their organization for that next year. So you then may have to go through another interview, the second interview with the host organization that you would potentially be doing the fellowship with. Like I said, it's a bit of a process and it takes, I think, a few months, if I'm not mistaken. Did it take me a few months? That process takes a few months, and then once you and your organization decide that it's the right fit, or once Princeton Africa staff and the organization feel like you are the right fit after your interviews, then you are officially accepted as a Princeton Africa Fellow, and you then start to prep for the next year on the continent. So my advice to you, if you are interested in working on the African continent, you want to get into international development, you want to have a different experience, or you are interested in collaborating with African NGOs or organizations from a humble and collaborative perspective and mindset, Princeton Africa is the right fellowship for you.